Well, welcome to Market Movers, Stephania. How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Today I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more, talk about your journey in the health and wellness industry, talk a little bit about your story becoming a fractional CMO. The premise is to talk about movers and shakers within their respective industries, right? How have you moved and shaken your roles in the past?
Yeah, so I'll take it back from the beginning. I started off on the technical side of marketing and SEO. Then I made my way over to luxury fashion and community building. And then I somehow landed in product marketing, which is where I like to be. And I quickly made a stint in the UX design world, but back to product marketing. So the way I landed in health and wellness was organically, in that it was supposed to be like a 3-month gig, and I ended up staying there for 7 years and now extended it over to my fractional CMO work. So I feel like the way I've been able to like move and shake or make a difference has truly been with like always keeping a very like innovative approach to everything I try to go at, whether it be a small marketing campaign or like even process improvement through the company or the team. And I live by this also, right? Which I feel like we've heard it more and more as of recently, like being that 1% better every single day and always keeping that in the back of my head. So whether it's a simple task or something bigger, just how do we make it better and how do we improve, whether as an individual or as part of a team?
So a little bit about your, expertise and roles that you had previously. What inspired you to be in health and wellness? Or was it always health and wellness? Or did you have different types of industries that you started with and you didn't really feel like that was your path?
It kind of happened by mistake, and it was an incredibly happy mistake. I started off on the tech side, then I did luxury fashion, and then I landed in health and wellness, and that felt like the most wholesome and unique to me. And so it was a perfect like kismet of it all, just the universe telling me that's where I needed to be. Because in my personal life, health and wellness has just always been top of mind. Sure. I was vegetarian for 20 years, so nutrition incredibly important to me, and navigating that on my own along with other nutritionists incredibly helpful. So then once I landed in the health and wellness role, I was able to pull things from my personal life over to the corporate world, and then whatever I was learning in the corporate world, pulled it into my personal side as well. So it's been a very like organic area that I've been able to build for myself. So, and I love to nerd out about like nutrition ingredients and like the latest health craze. Nice. Ask me about mouth tape and cold plunging. Like I've done it. Yeah. So I like to live in that space.
And so when you were in, let's say, tech and fashion, how did any of those roles kind of help you transcend into the health and wellness? Like what did you learn from those roles that helped you become more, because tech is big, right? Like learning different types of, processes and platforms, as well as like online, software. Like, how did that help you become better at your role?
I'm so grateful to like whoever put all these different pieces in place for me, because it's allowed me to get to where I'm at right now. So like started off on the technical side in SEO, in tech, like it could be boring, right? But you learn so much on the technical side of things. And so what little bit I learned from there, I took it over when I was building communities in fashion for like a luxury brand, right? And so then going into like the Facebook and the Instagram and the Pinterest of it all, right? Still taking those technical things that I learned from there to now build out this more creative space, to then taking all of that over to the product marketing side, where you need to be both creative and analytical, right? So I get to marry all of those things. And now even as a fractional CMO, right? I get to marry all of those experiences to what this is now.
Being a fractional CMO, what do you, love the most about the position, and obviously being your own boss, having a balance, and that kind of integrates into the health and wellness mindset, but also just like what is your favorite part about being a fractional CMO?
I love being able to work with different clients, and I guess you can do that in an agency as well. Like had I joined an agency, maybe I could have done that, but I think getting to personally pick and choose what projects I take on is a blessing, and I'm incredibly grateful for that as well.
So you mentioned agency. So can you describe kind of the difference for the audience about like what is a fractional versus an agency?
Sure. At least for what I do, you're a part-time employee or member of the team. Truly, fractional CMO to me is just a fancy title. You're a marketing strategist and you're a consultant. Fractional versus agency, I guess on the agency side, that would be a great question for you to answer.
Yeah, I mean, owning an agency, you have more of an in-house team, I would say. There's more people collaborating. You have outsource. The clients are integrated potentially a little bit differently based off time or retainer models. I think one of the things I wanted to talk about was like, how do you navigate this landscape, right? Like, how are you obtaining clientele, or how are you putting your name out there and networking? I think, obviously I met you through 6 Degrees, and Christina was the most previous interviewee that I got to talk to. And so seeing how she develops communities and how, I've been integrated into that recently, now I'm kind of in the trenches again, even though I've been in business 10 years.
I've only been doing it since September of last year, which is when I left the corporate world. So it's been a roller coaster ride, and I know we all have everybody has the same storyline, right? The first couple of years is a total roller coaster, and so I'm living through it now, so totally understand it. So some of those, I guess, strategies that I've been applying is, of course, the in-person, face-to-face networking, which had you asked me earlier this year, I would have said I hated it, but now I've learned to love it. So I'm doing the 6 Degrees. I'm doing a couple of other local things here in San Diego and trying to figure out what else makes sense specifically for like the health and wellness industry. So trying to find those niche areas in San Diego, but also even virtually, right? I do lunch club, which is also like a networking thing. I do that once a week, and you either talk to a character, you talk to someone with like a really interesting story, and like figure out ways to collaborate. So yeah, networking, I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out. But so far, I've met fun people.
And then so your personal brand, like how you're marketing yourself online, like are you leveraging it, and is it lucrative for you to like put yourself out there and market yourself?
It's for sure uncomfortable. I'll say that, right? And so there has to be a switch that happens in your mind also, especially because I came from product to now selling myself, selling the service. There has to be a switch that happens. And so it happened recently, right? Where you're like, okay, I am the product. What's my value proposition? And really like figuring out, and I know it's funny now, but like really figuring out like what the go-to market strategy is for myself and my services. And so it took a while for me to make that switch, but I feel like I found my footing. And unfortunately, I'm spamming everyone's LinkedIn algorithm, right? So the customer is in LinkedIn, right? The B2B side. And so that's been a major platform for me, as well as cold emailing, which I don't necessarily love, but it's been proven successful.
Yeah, I'd say it's like a hyper-focused strategy, right? So it's like you do everything all at once as much as you can, as quickly as possible to put your name out there and grab that attention. And then, once you start to land those clients and you build that roster of, retainers or however you work, it's just like, okay, now I have it, so I can slow that down. And then you focus your potential on the people that are actually paying for it. I think that you mentioned how you blend empathy within your campaigns. Can you explain a little bit more about your approach to that strategy?
Yeah, so especially when it comes to marketing and health and wellness products, right? Incredibly important for it to be more on like a personal approach to things. And so I can give you a true example of how I blended like the empathy with the strategy. I was leading the launch of a vegan product line not too long ago. And so it was a vegan product line, but we knew our target market wasn't going to be the hardcore vegans. We were definitely looking at the lighthearted vegans, or like those people that were maybe interested in veganism, or flexitarians, or just like vegan curious is what we called them. Right? So you have to come up with messaging that is inclusive and non-judgmental, so that they're even enticed to try out the product or even consider looking at your website, right? So we built out a full campaign based on more of like that empathy and that education, right? Because again, we weren't targeting the hardcore vegans. We were aiming at people who were potentially on a weight loss journey and were considering maybe taking it to the next level. Or maybe their doctor told them that they needed to lose some weight if they wanted to avoid a surgery or additional medication, right? So we were looking at this target segment of people who were curious to kind of take it up a notch in their health journey, but weren't necessarily going to be complete vegans, right? They were curious about this. And so that's where the empathy came into play, where like we had to take a much softer approach to this target consumer and really creating more a softer approach to all of it.
Can you talk about the language that you use, like with the inclusivity mindset?
Curious was one of the key terms that continuously kept popping up in our materials, right? Are you curious? Are you a flexitarian? Are you interested in what's the term? Meatless Mondays. Like, do you take part of Meatless Mondays? Right. So it's a one time a week where they don't consume any animal protein, right? Sure enough, Tuesday through Sunday, they're eating chicken steak and fish and whatever else, right? But that for that one day, they're curious or they're interested in potentially trying something different, right?
So it's taking like a health fad mentality, almost like a keto or macro counting, and just like kind of giving people a little bit tidbits here and tidbits there. So how were like the social media campaigns? Like, did you like create video content? Did you collaborate with influencers? Were you running ads?
Yeah, we did all of the above. Yeah. And we made it a point that our campaign, our visuals, we wanted them to be incredibly contemporary and trendy because we were a corporate company and they were very conservative. Even just getting that sort of like imagery out there was a huge success, right? And so earlier you were mentioning how you were taking a part of some sort of like TikTok trends, right? Yeah. We had to convince our executives to allow us to really push it when it came to social media, right? Because we needed to be relevant, and we needed to be relevant with Gen Z and the millennials in social media.
Can you talk about that process of pitching an executive that has no idea what you're talking about, or were they mind like curious?
Again, I was working for like a very conservative company, right? So anything out of the ordinary became a much larger thing, right? So there was a lot of strategy put into place even prior to having a conversation with, say, a VP, let alone another executive, right? So the 7 years that I was there, I learned how to strategize and kind of like rally people around me to support it. But sure enough, we were able to get that executive.
So now that your journey's like kind of completed with that corporate mindset and you're on your own as a fractional CMO, like how have you, I guess, what have been some campaigns you've navigated being on a solo adventure?
Yeah, I think the last one, or the one I'm currently doing, has been one of the more exciting ones, going over their entire like customer journey and really removing all the frictions in their onboarding and checkout process, which like to anyone can be like, well, duh, of course you need to do that. But for say something, a legacy brand that's maybe been around for over 45 years, they maybe haven't looked at that in like a decade or two. Right. And so just like cleaning up all of those processes to me has been really exciting. I love creating the personas and the customer journeys and the strategy for all of that. So to me, I've absolutely loved it.
You would love talking to my partner, Amy. She's my sister. So she does the strategy here at VCA. Okay. And so she's the one creating the personas and the avatars, the SWOT analysis and stuff. So I know I'm more of the production side of things. But one of our clients was a legacy client too. So recreating that process for them, you know, it's so fun to revamp and overhaul creatively, right? But then revamping and overhauling the internal infrastructure is a beast in itself. So how do you, I guess, as one person, like navigate that process? Do you outsource or do you like help? Like, does anyone help you?
Team of one. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so it's just me, but truly, like, I love to dive into all of these things. And so what I do is I recruit the president, the CEO, the customer service team, and then I do my own research, right? And so I get 4 different stories and then try to make sense of all of it, right? Yeah. Because the president or the CEO will have one version, customer service will have another, and then me as a fake consumer, right, will have a different storyline. So I piece all of those things, I map it out. Love Miro.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So I map all of that out and then determine how many touch points we need in the customer journey. Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Is it a text? Is it a mailer? Right? An ad, social media, determining all of those touch points. And that's where I like to nerd out.
Would you say you're more like the analytical side or the creative side?
I struggle to like lean to either one of those. I think because my background was so technical, I always have that in the back of my head, and I'm a numbers person, so always technical. But then I'm also incredibly creative and like a problem solver, right? And so in order to be a problem solver, you have to think outside of the box. So whether it's a visual creative, right, and identifying what's the best shot or the best angle for something, or what's going to be the best branding for whatever canister or product that we're selling, my mind is always running on both ends. It's a good balance, I want to say.
How do you tailor marketing solutions for your current clients?
There's a lot of factors that go into determining what's going to work best for a customer, but I like to start off from like the very basics, right? So what's their mission? What's their vision? What are their values? And then what's the brand's personality? Based off of those four things, you can go crazy, go to town, and start creating your marketing campaigns off of that. And so I work in with health and wellness clients. So sure enough, there can be a lot of similarities between them, but they all have a special sauce. And if they can't identify their special sauce, I help them identify like what their special value proposition is. So based on off of those four pillars, you then start to experiment with what's like the proper audience for them. Like, where does this product or where does this brand land in on the trend, right? If it's a protein shake or a mouth tape, right? Are they ahead of the curve? Are they right in the middle or at the tail end? Like, who actually is their customer base? So that's how I like to look at it holistically and truly get to the root of what the brand and the product actually is, and then build off of that. So any customer I work with or any client I end up working with, it's completely new strategy that benefits them based on their needs, their goals, and also their resources, right? Because if it's going to be different if it's a startup versus like a legacy brand, right? Also, how much resource can they actually put in? Not even just like monetarily, but how big is their team, right? Is it a team of one? Am I outsourcing it? Am I doing all of it, right? So it just kind of depends.
I would say, is it like a diet, You have to like kind of figure out what works for your body, right? The same way you're figuring out what it works for your client. Do you reverse engineer it? Would you say like from like an audience perspective or a storytelling perspective?
I like how you put that together because as soon as you said nutrition, I was like, yeah, macros, right? You think like, how much protein do I need, right? What's my brand? What's my audience? And what resources do I have to achieve these goals? So yeah, I like the way you put it together.
So how do you build loyalty for your clients and for brands and retention?
I think it's tricky in the health and wellness industry, mostly because it's oversaturated, right? So like, how do you build loyalty and retention when there's so many other options?
That's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So you build it by building a really, really strong brand, right? So what's going to set you apart? Building a really strong brand. And like we mentioned, right? Vision, mission, value, and your personality help set you apart. And you can build like the most elaborate loyalty program, right? We have Sephora and Ulta with like the points, and you get a gift when you spend $1 million, right? You get like a sampler. So you can develop all of that, but if you don't have this additional value to your audience or your customer, they're not going to take part of this loyalty program anyways, right? So aside from whatever product or service you're providing them, what's an additional value that you are giving them, right? And so that would be like the building of the loyalty, right? But then how do you build the retention? Not even talking about any of like the digital strategies you can implement for retention. Building out also like a very frictionless, whether it's onboarding or checkout process, right? Things that are going to allow for your customer to make it incredibly easy for them to come back, right? And also keeping in mind or the need to have a lot of touch points, right? So whether it's the social media, whether it's the SMS, whether it's the email, whether it's commercials, whether it's whatever tactic you want to use, right? But making sure you're always top of mind is how you're also going to help that retention rate and having an incredible customer service team, right? So if any issue does arise, they know it's going to be like an easy sailing for them as well.
Two things that come to my mind when you say those things, it's like user interface, like having like a clean website or clean application for people to go and shop, as well as like messaging that could, resonate with the current times, like kind of the culture that is today, like sustainability, and they like, these trends that, you're recycling and you're trying to save the earth, or you're inclusive, like you said, right? So it's like, how does that integrate into the loyalty and the retention?
I think everything you just mentioned also goes into like building a community, right? Because those things aren't necessarily, well, they can be tied to your product, right? Sustainability can be tied to your product or how you ship things and all of that. So it's part of the story, right? But building that community and making sure you make those connections with your audience. And again, bringing that additional value, right? And so whether it's education-based or whether it's service-based or anything else or additional resources that you can provide them, those are all going to help you retain your customers and really build that strong loyalty to your brand.
Do you have any insight for the audience of like your future vision as a fractional CMO, or any visions or predictions?
And I've only been a fractional CMO since September of last year, right? So it hasn't even been a full year. But even within the year that I've been a part of it, I've seen such a surge in other fractionals, right? So there's fractionals for everything else. And again, I feel like it's just a fancy title for just saying you are a consultant and a strategist for whatever vertical of the business you're a part of. So I just see it growing more and more. And with the way the economy is, unfortunately, we will definitely see a surge or an increase in more consultants and people just doing like solopreneur efforts.
Okay. Saturation.
Yeah.
All right.
So get ready.
We're getting ready then. I mean, that's why we got to put ourselves out there more. I think the more you put your face in front of people and like kind of create that story, like you said, and that persona, the likability aspect behind everything that we're doing, you know, creating podcasts or just doing, you know, forward-facing video content on your social media channels, just creating that story again and again consistently is, I feel, the upper hand.
And I love this. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. And, you know, I'd love to have you on again in the future, maybe part 2, figure some more stuff out. Yeah.
We'll talk more AI next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. Thanks, Stephania.
Thank you.